Filmmaker James Mangold is rumored to be working on a future Star Wars project for whatever that might be worth. Of course, we've heard this time and time again, but I have a feeling that of all the people or names in the past, his might have the most chance of coming to fruition. But recently he did an interview where the topic of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny came up. You remember that crowd pleaser. Well, of course, when it came down to the reaction to that absolute audience success, that commercial success. No, they lost a lot of money on that movie, like hundreds of millions of dollars. And of course, James Mangold decided to blame the fans.
Reggae Online.
James Mangold. This is a really long article talking about some of his current movie projects. He just did the Bob Dylan picture with Timothée Chalamet. I'm not going through the whole article. There's one specific section that I want to get to, which I think is so funny. I've got to scroll down and find it. I think I know which picture it's after. There it is. It's right here. Okay. This was it. So James Mangold, who, of course, right now is working on, of course, this is from Deadline magazine, so everybody can see the article here. James Mangold, who is currently working on a Star Wars something. We don't know what yet. And of course, James Mangold, and this is why I think his movie will actually happen, because he's already made one project. As you can see there, you can take a guess which that one was.
Indiana some people think he won't make one.
Yeah, well, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, that was incredibly popular film. One of those movies where Disney spent over $300 million on, even after a film tax credit. Another $100+ million in global marketing, and made a mint at the box office. And by that, it was a big minty turd. 300 some odd million was the global haul on that movie. Total disaster. Disney lost, we think, somewhere close, approaching $300 million basically on that movie.
One of the biggest cinematic flops in the history of cinema.
Yeah, it was a terrible movie that never should have been made for a multitude of reasons. It was nothing but a cash grab. And nothing but another attempt for Kathleen Kennedy to try to find some traction in her advanced age and declining capability.
And yet,
to which, of course, she didn't have a whole lot of capability to begin with.
And yet, if they had put Short Round in it and had him and Indy do one last adventure, it could have been something. But instead, we had to have another Kathleen Kennedy self-insert. And look how it's going for Fleabag. Yeah, her career's doing great now.
And there's that Kathleen Kennedy self-insert right there, okay? So let's talk about this. So they finally get to this point in this interview with James Mangold. Look, Mangold has done, and I'm make sure I'm clear on this, James Mangold has done some absolutely fantastic movies. He did Logan with Hugh Jackman, which was, I think, one of the greatest superhero movies that's ever been made. He did Ford versus Ferrari, which was an absolutely outstanding movie. When James Mangold when you just let him do like his movie, whatever he wants to do, he can crank out some amazing stuff. The issue is, just like most directors, showrunners, or whatever else, even if you start with somebody that has the proven talent that Mangold has, when you put them under, especially a Kathleen Kennedy workshop, it usually turns into a pooch screw. Okay, which is what happened here. Not to say that he's blameless, don't get me wrong, but you can't ignore the fact pattern through history with these god-awful Lucasfilm projects. Okay, so here we go. Deadline says, I ask about the Star Wars movie, Dawn of the Jedi, which he, James Mangold, is signed on to direct and write with Bill Williamson from House of Cards. Another very well received. That was the show, basically, House of Cards, that put Netflix's original series on the map.
Yep.
That made Netflix a thing. And that show was phenomenal.
Yep.
Up until the last season, when they were obviously forced to do a radical story shift because of the whole Kevin Spacey issue. We won't go down that road, but there you go. He says, my partner and I, James Mangold, talking about him and Bill Williamson, have been writing it, the new Star Wars movie, or one of the new Star Wars movies. I don't know what's next because we haven't gotten to the end of that process. So they're somewhere in the process of putting it together. Probably not that deep in that I would imagine. He replies, we're trying to finish a draft. Well, one hopes that it turns out as good as the work he put into Logan, the best performance of Hugh Jackman's career, and a terrific movie, a classic. We also chat a little bit about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny with Harrison Ford. Mangold's proud of the movie.
Uh-huh.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
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 Well, you know what?
Really?
Yeah, well, you know what? Culture, think about this. He can say that. He got a deserved butt chewing by the fans out there because of the bull crap and snapping back.
The
on
lies.
them.
He
But
lied. He lied.
Yes.
They
I'm
treated
trying to be
Salty Nerd
right.
podcast like they were a bunch of expletives. Turns out they were exactly right the whole way.
Yeah, he lied. He lied.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing, though. When you've got Disney in line once again, that for whatever reason wants to hand you another $20 million or $25 million or whatever they're going to pay him to both write and direct this film and executive produce it, obviously, as well. He's probably going to play nice. So I get it. But maybe he really feels very proud of the movie. I guess he does. I mean, I'm offering the audience all sides of the story here. Audience, you tell me out there. I'll tell you what, I'll do a poll. Y'all tell me, because I'm really curious. Let's see if I can do this. Start a poll. Here we go.
I can't stand when YouTube channels do polls. It's just too much, man.
I know, it's a pain in the butt. Is James Mangold actually...
Look at Culture's face.
What? You're like the king of polls, bro. What's going on?
Don't ever call me the king of polls again, Culture. You know what the audience is going to say. You know
Okay, here we go. Poll started. Simple. Is James Mangold, look up at the top, guys, is James Mangold actually proud of Indiana Jones 5? Okay.
I love
Now,
these things.
you can say, no, he's not. He's totally faking this for a paycheck and he thinks the movie was crap. Or he made a movie that he genuinely is proud of. I could honestly make arguments either way. I really could. And thank y'all out there. We're at 750 likes, thereabout. Let's get over 1,000. There's still over 1,100 of you watching on YouTube. Another few hundred of you still watching on X. If you're watching on X, hit the like, hit the share, repost it. I need to get over those X algorithms. I'm very, very close to getting subscriptions turned on, and I need your help doing that. So if you're watching on X, please share it out. Ask your friends, especially if they got blue check marks, because that's what X wants, to follow me. Appreciate you. I'm so desperate.
Me too.
Yeah, and if you're, follow him. That follow Culture. He's over there. He reposts me all the time. He's helping.
I do.
He's helping.
I do.
Let's try to get to 1,000 likes here on YouTube, though. Thank you guys very much. And if you're looking to get in on the chat and you're on X, open a page for YouTube as well. You can jump in on this chat. Okay. Back to the story. It says, Deadline says, we also chat a little bit about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny with Harrison Ford. Mangold is proud of the movie and he loves the cast, but he was hurt by how it was received. Okay, here's where we get. Has everybody answered the poll yet? Okay. Here we go.
He's going to gaslight us, isn't he?
Maybe. Me or Mangold?
No, Mangold.
Well, both of us. Okay. You have a wonderful, brilliant actor who's in his 80s, says James Mangold.
During the movie.
Yes. Yeah. You have a wonderful, brilliant actor who's in his 80s, says Mangold. So I'm making a movie about this guy in his 80s. Oh, yeah. By the way, he's not talking about Kathleen Kennedy. It's actually Harrison Ford is who he's referring to.
Harrison Ford was 78 when they shot it, and it was Indy was supposed to be 74. Keep going, James Mangold.
But his audience on one other level doesn't want to confront, or on one other level. I think he means on one or another, maybe, whatever. But he says, but his audience on one other level doesn't want to confront their hero at that age.
No, Mangold, we don't want you to turn him into a loser. You made him into a failed husband, failed father, failed professor, eating Doritos off of his wife-beater chest, sitting in a recliner, depressed, and fired from his university. We didn't want that. We didn't want him Han Solo'd again. Sorry, go ahead.
Mangold says, and I'm good with it. We made the movie, but the question is, how would anything have made the audience happy with that other than having to start over again with a new guy? Okay, this is, and that statement there to me.
He's such a narcissist. Such a narcissist.
He's in denial.
Yeah.
He is obviously in denial of reality. And it really bothers me when a filmmaker like this guy, who has made some incredibly talented works that I adore. I love Logan. I love Ford versus Ferrari. He has done some freaking awesome stuff. He's a very talented writer and director. When a guy like this has either reached a point where he thinks, yes, this stuff I crapped out is good, when it isn't. You could have left it with, well, the audience just didn't respond to it the way we'd hoped, and left it there. But you take the extra step of saying, trying to rationalize and reason. And granted, to be fair, there were a number of comments out there about why do we need an 80-year-old Indiana Jones movie? And I get that, but that wasn't the problem. That's not what caused the movie to fail.
Valiant,
commercially.
They said the same thing when Sylvester Stallone made Rocky Balboa. And at the end of the movie, everybody basically walked away and said, now I get it. And There's the speech that he gives in that movie to his son that makes the whole movie worthwhile. None of that is in Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny. All we get is depression, right? So when you say, what could I have done differently? Literally anything. Anything would have been better. Like, you chose the worst things to do in this movie over and over and over. So if you had deviated from any decision you made, the film would be better than it is. That's how bad that movie is. It's awful.
Well, yeah, that's where I was going with that. And that is that the decisions for this film, first of all, Mangold trying to pretend that this was the best we could do. That's all we had to offer. And what else did you want? We gave you a movie with this. This is what we had envisioned. The question is, how would anything have made the audience happy with that other than having to start over with a new guy? Don't
make him a loser. There you go. He's not a loser. He goes out as a hero. He's a great professor. His students love him. He evolves with the times. He still knows how to use a whip. Short Round shows up and partners up with him. Let Short Round be the hero this time. I don't care. There's like 1,000 ways to make it better. This was awful. It was terrible to watch.
Yep. No, but there was a number of things that they could have done. And I think, well, you just mentioned them all, so I won't even bother recovering it.
My fault. I'm sorry.
No, yeah. So the point is that there are ways to treat these characters, and Mangold just didn't do it. And the idea, the only other point I was going to make was the fact that you don't. First of all, I find it laughable that he would even bring up having to start over again with a new guy, right? Because they just told us a few years earlier with frickin' Solo, the same Lucasfilm people made the same excuse that the reason that people didn't go see Solo is because it wasn't Harrison Ford, who at the time was 75 instead of 78 or whatever. Well, if we'd had Harrison Ford in that, it would have worked. And now you got Mangold over here with the same studio at Lucasfilm telling us that, well, Harrison Ford, it didn't work because people didn't want to see him old. Well, which is it? I mean, he's just as much singularly Han Solo as he is Indiana Jones. There's no replacing him in those regard. They could have done a young indie movie, but they just simply decided not to do anything with this character. They simply decided to make this about Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who, again, is the chick over here on the left. And they decided to make this not about a heroic Harrison Ford. Like you said, he was just an old, dried-up loser in this. And nobody wanted to see that. Nobody wanted to see it at all. And this is the other very important thing, I think, in my opinion. I think, by and large, people at this point just didn't trust Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm and Disney to actually make a competent movie. We had seen enough of what Disney had already done to destroy Star Wars. We had seen enough of what Disney had done with Star Wars products on Disney Plus that weren't Mando Season 1 and 2. They had already seen enough of this. They had no faith. The very audience that they had depended on to go see Indiana Jones was the same audience they needed to make Star Wars successful, which is the same audience of old white dudes that Kathleen Kennedy and the chicks over at Lucasfilm that run that dumpster fire have driven off and have said they don't want. They don't want to cater to old white men anymore. Those same people are the same people that are fans of Indy. So they didn't show up for Star Wars. They weren't showing up for Dial of Destiny. And that's another problem. That's something that Mangold doesn't seem to realize either. And in that same regard, hang on, is that Mangold is now faced with the tall order of making a Star Wars movie, trying to cater to, guess what? The same audience that hasn't shown up for Star Wars so far, the same audience that didn't show up for his indie movie, the same audience that he just said, well, they don't get it. The audience didn't like it. What else am I supposed to do? He's now trying to go back to the well after saying that to the same audience and say, well, guess what? I got a Star Wars movie coming for you. You're screwed, bro.
I don't see any success in this. And I said so in the video I'm dropping tomorrow, but it's just he's got the wrong idea. He's been led down a really bad path by Kathleen Kennedy and her thinking, which is we have to get rid of these 50-year-old guys. Well, that's a generational audience that even Disney's now, they're losing it on all fronts, whether it be the theme parks or in the films or television. I mean, you were making the point, right? It's that if you can't get this generation interested, if you in something new, but you can keep the audience that you had and bring more people into it because of their enthusiasm, that's the people you want. You want to keep drawing in your regular fans. When you remove the things that the regular fans want, they don't have any incentive to see your stuff anymore. It's just that simple. Like if I'm a hamburger restaurant, to bring this into that business conversation that we always have, and I start serving fish instead of hamburgers, I'm going to lose my regular customers, or many of them, because they aren't going to like that. Yeah. And it's just, it's really that simple. And this guy, as you said, and very eloquently, he's lost this audience. He's lost me forever. I don't care. Look, I'm going back and looking at Logan with fresh eyes, thinking, oh, well, this is just another deconstruction film in a different way, more well done. He crafted a better script.
But Logan is one of those characters you can do that with because it's Logan. Like, he's grizzled. Logan was always like, kind of how it has had that attitude. He was the pessimist. He didn't want to be part of the pack. You could do that in his old age. He gets more grizzled. He's getting sicker. It fits. Okay. I can deal with that. You can't do that. Conversely, you cannot do that with Luke Skywalker.
Well, and or Indy, right?
Indy, and that's my point. Yeah,
no, and that's what I thought was great about the article we were covering, and the one that was written specifically by Marvin over on that Park Place. It's this understanding that where they left Indy last time with the Crystal Skull, which I don't even acknowledge. It's not in my head canon anymore. There was no Crystal Skull.
Yeah, and Disney had nothing to do with that. And that was terrible too.
Yeah, but where they left that film, they needed something that would please an audience. Mm-hmm. They didn't.
Right.
So, and so, nobody's going to trust this guy if, going into this next thing. And if he's proud of this film, great. Nobody liked your idea. Nobody liked the Kathleen Kennedy insert. Anyway, those are my thoughts. That's one of those things. I'm like, this guy doesn't understand. If he's going to work with Disney going forward, they're going to push him to do the same thing. The people aren't going to want it. I don't want more deconstruction in my life. And now I promise you, it will be Girl Boss the movie again. And nobody wants that. It was even a what is it, a bait and switch in the indie film we just saw. So I'm done.
So we know that James Mangold, we know what movie he makes. We know what he does with Indy. We know what he does with Logan. We know what movie he makes. I would not want another James Mangold Star Wars movie. I don't want a James Mangold Indy movie. In the same way that I don't want a Tim Burton Star Wars movie, because I know what kind of movie that Tim Burton makes, and I love them. But he doesn't make Star Wars movies.
No.
James Mangold, the only reason that they're talking about him making a Star Wars movie, despite the fact that he is ill-fitted to make a Star Wars movie, is because Star Wars can't find anybody else to make Star Wars movies because they're so poorly ran that nobody wants to do it anymore.
Well, that's why you hire independent people with no talent and no ability to be there, like Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy.
Yep, she'll do it.
Yeah. Why do you think she stuck around? Like we talked about before, for those of you who are new, I know we got a lot of new viewers, but this is the next Rey movie that's supposed to come out. And just real quick, I mean, they've gone through 3 writers now, the last of which was Stephen Knight, for God's sake.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the greatest freaking writers in cinema now. Because he went off to make his Peaky Blinders movie.
Yeah.
They lost him. Gee, I wonder why. And now all that's left is Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, a man-hating neo-feminist, which is perfect for Kathleen Kennedy, obviously, and all the girls at Lucasfilm. A man-hating neo-feminist that is going to do a Rey movie. She's still sitting there because Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, her only claim to fame is being a man-hating neo-feminist. She has done nothing but teeny tiny, itty-bitty little independent docu-projects and stuff like this, and all of a sudden she's going to be handed a $300+ million Star Wars movie. Why? Reasons? DEI? Whatever. Kathleen Kennedy likes her because she shares the same politics and will not cater to the old white male patriarchal Star Wars audience or whatever. She's the only one still attached to that production. 3 guys have left it. And 3 not untalented guys. I think 3, maybe 2. Could be miscounted. No, I think it was 3. It was 3. Yeah.
Well, now they're talking about giving Rey a trilogy, right? Because they have nothing. They
Not a movie.
have nothing anymore.
Not a movie. Not a movie.
Yeah.
A trilogy.
Yeah. And look, I hope they do. That'll give me content forever to talk about.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.